This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Is this the happiest that we've been as Lions fans at the end of the season? In our lifetime, maybe?
Yeah, I'd say so.
It's pretty close. I mean, if you want to just say end of the regular season, then like years we made the playoffs, probably a little bit better. Outside of the one where we bagged in because we lost like 4 straight, that one nobody was happy.
Well, yeah, I remember I was pretty happy the year we made the playoffs. We beat the Chargers at home to finally play the clinch our playoff spot.
Right, that was
like on Christmas. It was on Christmas Eve, I'm pretty sure, too.
Was that the 2014 year? Or was that 2011?
Somewhere around, I think it was 2014.
Okay.
But it was on Christmas Eve, I want to say. So it was like all around.
Right, yeah.
It was all around good vibes.
It was. Obviously, we are going to be doing our Lions end of season roundup here today. We're going to be talking. There's not really too much to talk about with the Pistons.
It was 2011, by the way.
Okay. There's not a ton to talk about with the Pistons. They're just continuing to flounder along.
Hey, they picked up a win last night.
They did pick up a win. I'd like to get some of your observations from that game, if you don't mind. And we're going to be talking about the Ben Johnson scenarios here and what that could look like should he decide to leave. But this is the Fan Report where it's by fans.
For fans.
We're on episode number 187. You can follow us on Twitter at Real Fan Report. We are brought to you by Detroit Sports Podcast at Detroit Podcast on Twitter for them. It's been an interesting Lion season, a Jekyll and Hyde season, if I must say. You know, and a lot of people are, and I do feel like, so I feel like there's been a somewhat healthy response from some Lions fans out there where they're not everybody is saying, oh, we're amazing. We're this awesome team and nobody could have stopped us. And while I will say this, I do think the Lions by the end of the season were one of the top 3 teams in the NFC. I will say that.
I won't argue on that one.
However, fact of the matter is they were still a 9-8 team, and they started 1-6. You play 18 games or 17 games for a reason. 18 games. The NFL wishes. You play 17 games for a reason, and for 8 of those games, you didn't play good football. Well, 7 of those games, you didn't really play good football. But there is a lot of reason to be optimistic about what the Lions did this year, especially in the latter half of the season. And a lot of reason to be happy as a Lions fan. You know, a lot of questions that we had coming into the season with the quarterback situation. There's still a question mark there, don't get me wrong. But I'll tell you right now, at least from my point of view, who was somebody who was ready to go give Sam Darnold a shot at the quarterback position over Jared Goff, I'm comfortable going with Jared Goff at the beginning of next season. I'm comfortable giving Jared Goff another year. I am. And in fact, I'm happy. Because Jared Goff played some of the best football of any quarterback we've seen in the last decade and a half.
You're not getting one of the top 2 quarterbacks in this draft, number 6. And you're not going to trade up for a quarterback. If you're trading up, it's for Will Anderson. All right?
Right.
So, yes, you do take a quarterback in this draft to hopefully, I probably wouldn't do it with our first round pick. But
did you hear Brad
hopefully
Holmes'
someone that we
today?
can. I did not.
So Brad Holmes, he was asked the question about the backup quarterback situation. He talked about how when they brought in Tim Boyle and he did a fine job, but it didn't work out. And then Nate Sudfeld did a good job, but they're definitely looking to solidify the position high in this draft. So does that mean that they're going to be looking at a quarterback in the first 3 rounds of this draft? Because that's what it sounded like to me.
It doesn't have to be a rookie quarterback to be your backup.
No, but he did specifically mention the draft.
I do agree that we should grab a quarterback in this draft, but more so as hopefully someone that can learn to golf for maybe a year or 2 and then take the reins in the future, hopefully. Because you're also probably not going to be in position to draft a good quarterback next year unless you traded for a draft pick.
Right. And frankly, I mean, there's a number of project quarterbacks you can take in the 3rd round or 4th round that could develop into something. No, it's not likely that they'll ever develop into a legitimate starting quarterback in this league. Most quarterbacks taken outside the 1st round don't make it. But it's something, and it's something you can look at. And what Jared Goff gives you, at the very least, is time. Time to develop, time to compete time to develop the guy behind him. Or if you're not sold on any of the guys that are there in your spots, time to wait until next year to get your guy. So I have no issues going in with Jared Goff next year. Some of the other questions we had, what's this pass rush going to look like? Well, it turned out to be pretty damn good. You set an NFL record for sacks by a rookie class. It only looks even better than it did going into the season. What does the secondary look like?
James Houston was a nice surprise.
Sure was. Eight sacks in 7 games, I believe. That's pretty damn good. Aiden Hutchinson had a really good year. 2 picks, had a forced fumble, had 8.5 sacks or 9.5 sacks, I believe. That's pretty damn good. And then you got a couple sacks from Pascal, who didn't play a whole season. You got a sack from, I believe it was Deshaun Elliott or Kirby Joseph, one of the two. You had one of the best rookie classes I've seen in my lifetime in a Lions, from a Lions system, and from any system, in all reality, from any organization.
Let's just hope it sustains.
And now I look ahead to this upcoming draft, and I think, okay, what else are we going to add to this? And I will say this. I don't necessarily want the Lions to use all the picks that they have, especially inside those top 3 rounds. And by that, I mean, I'm ready for some adults in the room. So very similar to how I feel about the Pistons. I'm ready to have some adults in the room. And I will straight up say, for some of these picks, not all of them, I'll straight up say, fuck these picks. Get me a game changer. You know, if the right call comes and they want number 6 and they're willing to offer a big time player, yeah, I'm gonna do it. I absolutely am gonna do it.
You know what's something else I think we should consider is trade. Like, if a good offer comes for one of our first round draft picks for a first round pick next year,
fine,
from a team that you would think has a solid shot of being a top half of the first round team.
That absolutely is something you could look at.
Because like I said before, like it doesn't, at least right now, it doesn't seem like you're going to be in a position to draft a high-end quarterback next year, even if you wanted to.
Right.
So
you're competing for the North next year. Your goal next year is not to just make the playoffs. Your goal is to win the North.
So you might need to, load up some ammo a bit.
Right, which is fine. But if the Rams were to come calling and say, hey, we'll give you Jalen Ramsey for 18 and one of your second-round picks, I'm going to take that. Maybe not both, but maybe a first and a third, like 18 and a third round. Yeah, I'm going to take that. He's a game changer. Absolutely. Like guys like that are the type of players we need on this team because they are leaders. They're game changers, and that's what we need right now. And frankly, in all reality, what is the most common thing we're going to use the number 18 overall pick on? A corner, a game-changing corner. Guess what? Jalen Ramsey's that already, and he's under contract. Yes, expensive.
I saw a mock the other day where we take Joey Porter at 6. I'm like, I like Joey Porter and all, but I don't want to.
I have seen mocks where we have a corner at 6. I'll be honest with you. There's not a lot I wouldn't be okay with at 6 and 18. I'll be straight with you. There's not a lot I would not be okay with. A tight end, I would not be okay with. But beyond that, I'm not going to be unhappy if we go pretty much anywhere else. I'm not a huge fan of running back at 6. I don't think we need a wide receiver at 6 either. But I'm not going to be totally unhappy if we go with Joey Porter at 6 because it is a position of need, and we are starting to get into the position where we may be just a couple of guys.
You could probably trade back 4 or 5 spots and still get them.
Agreed. Well, actually, here's a scenario for you. One of the scenarios I heard brought up today, in fact, Carolina Panthers want to trade up from 9 to 6. The scenario thrown out was they were giving you their second round pick as well as number 9 to move up 3 spots to 6. Does it quite even out to what the trade market sheet says? No, but I'd take that. I go to 9, I get the guy I want anyways, and I get an extra pick inside the top 64. Hell yeah, I'm going to do that.
Give me a second next year too. Yeah.
Fine. You're probably going to end up getting something like a third next year to go along with it, but yeah. Like that type of stuff, I'm okay with. I'm okay. Like we don't necessarily have to make the pick at 6. One of the biggest names that I've seen people wanting to target.
Why are we going so draft heavy right now?
Because we're just talking about what the future could look like for the Lions, and that's that's fair. One of the things I've seen, and this is really where you start seeing the first real mock drafts come out too. One of the names I've seen for the Lions to go after is Brian Breesy, the kid from Clemson, the defensive lineman there. I'd love that pick. I'd love it. And frankly, if we're taking him at 6, or if you think we can get him at 9, do it. Because I'll be honest with you,
I think you can definitely get him at 9.
You have one. Well, here's a mock draft right in front of me that has him going at 5. So
Really?
maybe not. Yeah. One thing I will say, and this is why I'm okay with going a couple of different position groups, and I will say defensive line is still my number one, whether it be an interior or a pass rusher. Either one is fine. But right now, the Lions have an elite offensive line, yes? I think you're maybe 1 to 2 players away from an elite defensive line. Maybe 1 to 2.
If Houston stays in the same, James Houston stays on the same trajectory, Jesus Christ. Yeah, you add in a interior lineman that's going to demand attention.
So that's
gonna ease up pressure a lot on Aiden Hutchinson and James Houston.
Right, but the thing is with a guy like James Houston is he's a pass rushing specialist, so he's your third down guy. So you need somebody to play that position, on first and second down that can stop the run a bit more. Even if James Houston takes a step back, let's say he goes back to 6 sacks next year.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's a step back.
Yeah,
I still think you're 1 to 2 guys away. You add a Jalen Carter into that. Yeah, that's a terrifying defensive line. You add a Brian Breesy to that. Yeah, that's a terrifying defensive line. That's elite right there. So then you mean to tell me that we're going into a season where we have an elite offensive line and a potentially elite defensive line? I'll tell you right now, that's going to win a lot of games. That's going to win divisions. That's going to win conferences. That could potentially win you a Super Bowl.
I think a football game is won in the trenches. So on both sides of the ball. No, I think the elephant in the room, though, I don't think Ben Johnson's going to be here next year.
I don't know.
I knew he was going to get some interviews. I didn't realize he was going to be, along with Sean Payton, the hottest name in the market.
He is the betting odds favorite to land. I believe it's the Carolina job.
I did a little spreadsheet earlier today. I made a little pivot table, just tracking who's interviewed what and seeing how many interviews like each coaching candidate's got. Sean Payton, for context, has 3. So does Ben Johnson. No one has more.
Ben Johnson has 4 interviews in front of him now. He got a 4th. He got asked for a 4th team. Texans,
I saw Colts, Texans, Panthers,
Broncos have asked. No, sorry, Cardinals. Cardinals asked. Arizona is asked to interview with Ben Johnson.
I did not see that. That would put him in the lead then. There was no coach
so
Ben Johnson has 4.
Over the years, think back to 2014, we had a situation where we had a coordinator that was getting interviews. Darryl Austin, if you remember. But it was like 2 interviews, and he was never really the big candidate there. He was kind of like I don't want to really say he was a Rooney Rule candidate, but it almost seemed that way. Ben Johnson looks to be the hot candidate out there, and that's terrifying.
That's why I don't think he's
the strangest thing though is the guys that you see are the coordinators that you see be the hot names are the coordinators for teams that are 12-4, 13-3, 13-4, 12-5, 13-4, like the teams that win a lot of football games, not the teams that are 9-8. He's getting a lot of credit for what happened to the Lions, and he should. And he should. I will say this though. That offense had one of the best team of coaches of any offense in this league. Mark Brunell looks like a genius quarterback coach right now. Genius quarterback coach.
Probably the odds-on favorite to take over the OC spot if Ben Johnson will leave.
Deuce Staley is known for being not only a great running backs coach, but also a great assistant head coach. He's a big-time part of that offense. Dan Campbell, anytime you looked on this, you got the pan to the sideline, and they were calling offensive plays, guess who was talking? Dan Campbell. He had a big hand in that offense. So while I don't want to see Ben Johnson leave, and by that I mean I really, really, really don't. Like, that would make me very upset. I really want Ben Johnson to be successful here for a long time. I do think there were more hands in the pot than just Ben Johnson's to make this offense do what it did. In terms of the play calling, in terms of the way the offense flowed and it ran. I still think he was a huge part of it, and that's why I don't want to break up the band. Like, I want to keep the band together and go run the show next year. Like, I want to run the North, run the NFC next year, and I think Ben Johnson's going to have to be a part of that. Not saying they can't do it without him, but leave us alone for fuck's sakes. Leave us alone. We're finally getting good at this. Don't ruin it.
You know what's crazy? Ben Johnson's got all these interviews. Aaron Glenn has an interview with the Colts.
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to
I don't think is going to get as much.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I agree. But another year of success.
Both coordinators are gone.
Are we going to suddenly be talking about a Dan Campbell coaching tree?
Shit, we could be talking about Dan Campbell coaching tree after this offseason. Who would have thought coming into this year we'd be talking about a Dan Campbell coaching season at this time next year? Like, or coaching tree. That's wild. It's got me nervous. I won't lie. Like, if we have a really good season, let's say we win in the NFC North, we win a playoff game or two, we get the number 2 seed. Let's say that. I think both coordinators are gone, to be honest with you.
Then who do you look to? Our current passing game coordinator, Tanner Engstrand?
Well, no. If Ben Johnson
do we look at Mark Brunell?
We look at Mark Brunell to be
do
the
we look
OC.
at JT Barrett?
Who? What? Why? Is he
He's
part
our
of our
offensive
system?
assistant.
He is?
Yeah.
Oh, we hired that guy. I did not know he was in our coaching staff.
I mean, I think we're both in agreement that it's a natural fit for a quarterback as an OC.
It is.
Which is part of the reason
Mark Brunell.
Mark Brunell. Yeah, which part of the reason we like Mark Brunell. But then, we also have JT Barrett.
I would much rather Mark Brunell. I think Mark Brunell is... I'll be honest with you. I think Mark Brunell is an offensive coordinator and head coach in waiting. I really do. From what he did with Jared Goff this year, just blew me away. He made Jared Goff a better quarterback this year. It helps to have an elite offensive line, but he helped with Goff's decision making in a way that I don't think I've ever seen Goff get. Like you saw a different version of Jared Goff than we've ever seen. And I said it last week that, if Jared Goff even has, how many times am I going to say his name in the last 5 minutes? But if he has just a pedestrian game, you're looking at the best quarterback season in a Lions uniform since Stafford's 2011 season. And that's still true. Even though he didn't throw any touchdowns, it's still true. It says a lot. It says a lot about Ben Johnson. It says a lot about Mark Brunell. It says a lot about Dan Campbell.
So one coach we haven't talked about is Deuce Staley. I mean, he did have a running back break Barry Sanders touchdown record under his watch.
Granted, I think 6, 7, or 8 of those runs were from the 1-yard line.
Oh, at least. And he is technically the assistant head coach. What are the odds that he could step into the OC role?
I'm kind of curious about that one because why?
It did look like on Hard Knocks, it looked like he was doing a little bit of play calling.
Right, but why
in
hasn't he stepped into an OC role in the past? Because with the Eagles, he was the running backs coach and the assistant head coach. Why hasn't he stepped into an OC role anywhere? Why has he been a running backs coach and an assistant head coach? What does he just not like the game planning aspect of being an OC?
Maybe
he's just not his forte?
Maybe he's not a play caller.
Right, which is fine. And I think he does a great job with what he does, and I would be fine with keeping him where he's at. I just find it kind of interesting that he hasn't ever really stepped into that role, because would being an offensive coordinator be a demotion? Like, would that be a downgrade from an assistant head coach?
Assistant head coach / offensive coordinator.
That's kind of weird because assistant head coach is supposed to be on the sideline and OCs are normally up in the booth. It just seems like a weird move for an assistant head coach, but who knows? Honestly, if I were to take, let's say Ben Johnson leaves, and knock on wood that he doesn't. If I were to make the bet right now, Deuce Staley would be our assistant head coach still and running backs coach, and Mark Brunell would take over the OC. That would be what I would expect to see happen.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it.
But give me your thoughts from this season. Like, what are your thoughts overall?
I mean, after the Miami game, I made it very public that I was out, and this son of a bitch pulled me back in. I don't think I've been higher on a head coach than I am on Dan Campbell at this moment in time. Lions head coach, to be specific. So, that being said, I would say this was a highly successful season. And the amount of fun I had watching the Lions walk into Lambeau, already in an environment they don't normally win, in January.
They've won 3 times in the last 33 meetings. in Lambeau.
In January, also an environment they don't normally win. Sunday Night Football, also a time they don't normally win. Against Aaron Rodgers when he is in a win and get in situation.
And hot.
That everything said Packers for that game. Now we're Lions homers, so we both beat the Lions. But that game sent me not that I wasn't on board after the last few wins, but that game really sent me the message that this is not the same old Lions, and it's finally something different. It was a really good thing to leave the season off on. Really good note to leave on.
It absolutely was. Something that's really kind of a strange feeling for me as a Lions fan is, as the conversation's going to be kind of weird as we get further and further into the offseason. We are coming off of a good football season. We were a winning football team. We were 9-8, almost made the playoffs, and honestly should have if it weren't for a terrible running into the punter call in a game we weren't even playing in. But we're still going to be talking about
Dean Blandino came out after the game too, and was still talking about how that should have been running in the punter call.
Right. But we're still going to be talking about a top 7 pick. That's a weird feeling, and weird to have conversations about that because we're still going to be talking about a lot of positives. Versus think back last year where we had the number 2 overall pick. There were not a lot of positives to be talking about. But this team has a lot of positives, and a lot of it is because of what we saw from the last 10 weeks of the season. And honestly, some of it's from the entire season. And you talked about how you were high on Dan Campbell. I'm kind of right there with you because this team really plays for this guy. I don't know that I've ever seen a head coach in this city that's gotten more out of less than Dan Campbell did this season. Because coming into the season, what was one of the biggest things we said about this football team? There is a massive lack of talent on this roster.
Especially on the defensive side of the football.
Massive lack of talent on this roster. And they still managed to win games. They won 8 out of 10 to finish out the year.
And they weren't just beating up on bad teams. They were beating
They had some good wins. They beat the Giants. They beat the Jaguars, who turned out to be a good football team. They beat the
Jets before the Jets imploded.
Right. They beat some good, granted it was the Zach Wilson Jets. They beat the Vikings. Those are they beat the Packers.
In Lambeau.
Good football, and at home. They've won 3 straight against the Pack. There's a lot to look at with Dan Campbell and say he got a lot from a little. And, that's a little bit of disrespect to the players because a lot of these guys I didn't really expect to play as well as they did. Nobody expected a 1,000-yard season out of Jamal Williams, let alone 17 touchdowns. I mean, we all expected Amon-Ra St. Brown to do what he did, but nobody expected Jared Goff to have the season that he had. Nobody expected our tight end group to look the way it did after we got rid of TJ Hawkinson, which, by the way, looks like a genius move at this point.
I mean, it coordinates exactly with when we started winning.
Sure does.
It was when I thought we were, so we're just punting on the season now. We're giving, okay, cool. And then all of a sudden we just rip off the
What I find really odd is they took away a top weapon from a quarterback, and then he started playing his best football. When can you ever quote a time where that's happened? You took away, in all reality, you took away his number 2 weapon.
It's weird because even though Hawk wasn't playing up to where he was picked, he wasn't bad enough to where I would have considered it. Yeah, I would not. It wasn't bad enough where I would have considered moving Hawk addition by subtraction.
Right.
So it does blow my mind that's how
it absolutely
working
blows
out.
My mind.
It did feel nice to beat Minnesota after Hawk talked about one. Playing some meaningful games, and we go in there.
Yes, it absolutely, absolutely did.
But if we'd made the playoffs, if we'd drawn anyone but
the 49ers.
I feel like you said, I feel we were better than more than half the teams that made the playoffs in the NFC.
I would say not just more than half. I literally am saying you're a top 3 team in the NFC right now because looking at it, would you beat
the Eagles and Niners? Everybody in the NFC.
Because right now you beat the Cowboys. Dak Prescott can't stop throwing picks. Right now, you absolutely would beat the Giants. You already did in their turf. You'd absolutely beat the Vikings. You did it. And you almost did it the first time when this team wasn't good yet.
Yeah, you should have swept them.
You beat the Seahawks. You beat the Commanders. You'd beat just about anybody in the NFC that you'd be, in my opinion, the favorite to beat all of those teams in the NFC besides San Francisco and Philly.
I agree.
And I'll be honest with you.
And that's what makes it bittersweet.
And I think you would give both teams a run for their money, too. That would be a damn close game. Both of them.
I've gotten to the point where it was first half of the season. I was like, I can't even trust Dan Campbell to have these guys ready to play when in the second half you come out. It was like 3 straight games where we came out in the second half and didn't score a point. Like in the entire. So I was like, I can't even trust Dan Campbell to like keep these guys in games. And then from that point on, like it was outside of the Carolina game, there was no game where you weren't competing.
You just saw good football game after game after game. And
I still don't know what the hell happened in that Carolina game. Like that was a totally different team.
I have no idea. They just got demoralized in that game. Yeah, it was just demoralizing. I don't know, but
so yeah, if anything, I would have at the very least, like let's say we're playing the 49ers in San Francisco, I would have at the very least expected us to come out and compete.
Yes. 49ers, Philly, didn't matter who you were playing. I absolutely would expect the Lions to come out and compete and make that game close. Absolutely. There's just a lot to look at with this Lions season and say it exceeded expectations. What were our expectations coming into the year? 7 wins? 6, 7 wins? What was the over-under? 6.5, if I remember right?
Yeah, we did like the little when we did like the schedule win-loss thing. We came out to 8 wins, but we're always high when we do those.
Right.
And not like smoking
with the over being,
the
and I believe if I remember right, we said that to meet expectations this year, you just got to hit the over. I remember us saying you just got to hit the over. You got to get those 7 wins.
Yep.
They exceeded it. And then later on in the season, I said, for me to get Dan Campbell on, for me to be on Dan Campbell's
like 8 wins
train,
felt like the ceiling for this team this year.
Yes, it did.
And we got to 9.
Right. And I said that for me to get back on the Dan Campbell train, I need 8 wins. They exceeded that. They got 9. They won tough games they weren't expected to win. A lot of that has, we talked about earlier in the year of what kind of culture can this team instill without winning games? What kind of culture are you instilling here? And I look at it now and I say there's absolutely a culture here and it's a winning one. I think this will attract talent. Players are going to want to come play for this guy. Yeah. Players are going to want to come play for this team. And now it's time to take that next step. Go add that one more piece you need on the D-line to become an elite position group. Go add a piece to your linebacking group to upgrade them. Go add a piece in your secondary to shore that position group out. Get another running back. You got a lot of draft capital to do it. And you don't even have to make all your picks to get some of that. The Lions are in a great opportunity to take a step that we have never seen this team take. Not in our lifetime.
All right, before we get to the Lions, I want to do a quick rapid fire.
We just talked about the Lions for 30 minutes.
Pistons. Before we get to the Pistons, I want to do a quick rapid fire on the Lions unrestricted free agents. I'm going to give you some of the names, and I want you to tell me whether or not you would like to re-sign them.
Re-sign them? Okay.
First name is Alex Anzalone.
Oh, he's one that I've been back and forth on all season. If he's willing to take a smaller role, yes. He's gonna have to. He's not going to be a starting linebacker for me next year.
Well, you have to bring in some talent because I still don't think your linebacker group is deep enough to.
No, I agree with you because my intention is to bring in some talent.
Yeah. Well, Mike Badgley.
No. I'd like him to draft Jake Moody out of Michigan. To be honest.
How about Evan Brown?
Yes. I think he's your starting right guard next year.
But Austin Bryant.
How cheap we talking?
He's probably going to have to become pretty cheap. I mean, he didn't play the whole second half. I think he was hurt. But and plus, when he went out, James Houston came in. So
true. I'm probably going to lean no.
Yeah.
Just because I feel like
if you want to keep him around for depth,
I feel like we're developing depth without him, though, because there are some other guys who were hurt this year.
He did have 4.5 sacks last season. He
did. But you also got to remember, Romeo Okwara missed half the season this year, more than half the season. Technically, he only played 8 games. Julian Okwara, I really don't think played a whole lot either. There are guys that we have on this roster that you could argue.
But the Okwaras just can't stay healthy.
Yeah, right. But again, that's why
we have runs
depth.
In the family.
That's why we have depth.
How about Bugs?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
he was a monster late in the year as a run stopper, a guy that just creates havoc on that line.
How about DJ Chark?
I do bring him back. I give him another shot. I want to keep him here. I felt like he started to develop a really nice rapport with Jared Goff by the end of the season. I want to see that continue to build. Bring him back.
Yeah, he missed like the first half of the season basically,
right?
And over the second half of the season he got like 500. He was basically at 1,000-yard season pace.
Right. Yeah, I bring him back.
Here's an interesting guy, John Kaminsky.
Absolutely. He's not the flashiest guy, but he hustles all over the field, and he just seems to be where the ball is. I'd bring him back. Yes.
Did you see his Instagram post?
You want to talk depth? That's a guy you keep for depth.
Did you see his Instagram post?
I did not.
So he put on his Instagram. It was what did he say? It was like end of 2022 season. Can you please release me? And then, or end of 2021 season. Can you please release me? End of 2022 season. Like, I want to be like, can I stay here? Kind of like, it was something I'm paraphrasing, but like,
who was he saying? Can you please release me to?
He was on the Falcons before us.
Okay, that's right. I would absolutely bring back John Kaminsky. I thought he was a fantastic player to have opposite of Aiden Hutchinson this year.
Yeah, he's one of the guys that it feels like he really wants to be here, which you can't understate. So or underestimate. How about Deshaun Elliott?
Yes. I'd like to bring him back. I thought he was a fine depth piece in the secondary.
Yeah. I don't think you can afford to lose any quality piece in the secondary right now.
You are getting Tracy Walker back, which is kind of nice, but you're going to have to make Tracy Walker and Kirby Joseph work together because they play the same position. So you're going to have to flip one of them to the other side.
How about a trio of corners and Will Harris, Mike Hughes, Amani Oruwariye? All three unrestricted free agents this year.
I'm probably going to let them all go. If I'm keeping one, it's probably Mike Hughes, honestly. I think Oruwariye is done. I don't think he's very good at all. And who was the first name you mentioned?
Will Harris.
Will Harris, I don't think he's very good either. I may keep him, but of the three, I'd probably rank Mike Hughes the highest.
I think I'm going to agree with your assessment. Yeah, Oruwariye did not have the bounce back that I was hoping he would.
No.
And yeah, Will Harris just was kind of there. Mike Hughes was the only one that I could think of 2 and 3 that
Mike
actually
Hughes was the one
had games where he was effective.
Where I can remember games where I said, hey, Mike Hughes had an alright game. I don't remember that with Oruwariye, and I definitely don't remember that with Will Harris. So
Jamal Williams.
Yes, 100%. Even if you never get a season like what we got out of him, and I don't expect one. Like I expect him to go back to the 700 yards and 5-6 touchdowns as a secondary back.
Yeah.
For the locker room presence alone,
exactly,
you got to bring this guy back. You have to.
And if he didn't prove that he was a heart and soul of this team with that post-game interview against the Packers, I mean, I don't know what will.
He has more heart than most players I can remember in a Lions uniform.
That should be a Lions rallying cry going into next season, if you ask me.
You bring that guy back.
Mm-hmm. I should see that played on the Jumbotron on the scoreboard at Ford Field.
And he's just awesome.
Yeah.
He's just awesome.
Excuse me,
it's Pokemon, not Pokemon.
Don't do
that. Did you notice that he brought back the little hip thrust touchdown dance in Green Bay?
Oh, yeah.
But it was only 2 pumps, not 3 pumps.
Yep. Yeah, but those are the unrestricted free agent rapid fire. Those are the guys that I wanted to hit.
Yeah,
so it sounds like it sounds like where we're going to see the most turnover would be the secondary.
Yes. And that's kind of what I expect. Yeah, because that's where, when it came down to it, that turned out to be the weakest group of the defense. The defensive line looked pretty good. The linebacking core was actually not bad at all. Much better than expected. And the secondary was just okay. Kirby Joseph looks really looks like a gamer. He looks like a really good player. Jeff Okudah at times looked like a really solid player. He fell off towards the end of the year, but he was probably dealing with some injury issues. He's got to prove he can stay healthy, but he can be a part. And if you're going after at number 18, if you're going after a guy like Keely Ringo, you don't need Jeff Okudah to be a number 1. That's what Keely Ringo's for.
And I think in terms of going to the draft, it's pretty wide open in terms of who you can draft on the defensive side of the ball. I think the only thing that would make me mad is player versus draft position.
Yes.
But there's no position on the defensive side of the ball where I'm going to be upset on drafting that position.
I don't necessarily want a safety at 6.
Like I'm saying, player at draft position. That's
Like I'll be honest with you. If they took Joey Porter at 6, I wouldn't hate it. Would I be like, oh, we could have gotten maybe something a little better? I'd hate it if Jalen Carter's on the board or Will Anderson, but Joey Porter could be a game changer. He could.
Yep.
And that's what this team needs on the defensive side of the ball. They've got potentially one with Aiden Hutchinson. They've, add another one to that with a guy like Joey Porter, Keely Ringo, and guess what? Your defense is now pretty damn good.
Are you of the belief that number 6 should still be best player available, even if that's on the offensive side of the ball?
No, because I don't think if wide receiver is the best player available, I don't think that's the smart way to go. This team is now beyond the position.
I'd be surprised if wide receivers.
Obviously, but this team has gotten to a point where I believe that it is beyond taking best player available. You are now filling needs to round out a roster that to go win games, win divisions, win conferences, and fight for a Super Bowl. You've reached that point now where you now are shoring up your team and trying to find the game changer at certain positions because that's what you need. Now, I will say that most positions that will be available just so happen to be where I would like to have a game changer. So like defensive line or pass rush, there's going to be a couple of those guys available there. Quarterback, you can make an argument there. Corner, you can make an argument there.
Yep.
Those are all guys that I'm seeing in the top 5 here. In the top 10, I should say. So if best player available is one of those guys, yeah, I sure, why not? Take one of them. I don't think they need an offensive tackle. I don't. You're pretty solid there. If they took guard at 18, I wouldn't be mad because, you got to fill that position somehow. But if you told me the Lions came out of the draft with Brian Breesy and Keely Ringo in the first round, I'd be ecstatic because you just arguably made your defensive line elite and you shored up your secondary to a point where you almost are set.
Yeah.
And then you've got 3 other picks in the next 60. So
it's going to be an exciting offseason.
It is. There is so much to be excited about this offseason. I'm already ready for next year's football season. Like I am fired up and ready to go.
But yeah, we've got plenty of time to continue to cover the draft. I'm sure we're gonna talk it to death.
Right. And we're gonna see prospects move up and down, and there's a lot that still has to change. Now, let me ask you this before we close out: if any of the quarterbacks are available at 6, do you look that way? Let's say Jalen Carter, Will Anderson are gone. Do you look quarterback? Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, staring you in the face at 6. Do you go?
I still don't like. I'm pretty much out on Ohio State quarterbacks. Put that there.
Same.
But I'm still not the highest on Bryce Young. Like
my only concern.
An Alabama team didn't make the playoff under his watch.
Fair. They did last year. Year.
True.
My concern with him is his size. I think he's too small. I think that will be a bit of a concern come the NFL. I like him as a player.
I did see a mock today that had Will Levis going to the Lions.
I don't like. No, I'm good on Will Levis.
You know
I
what
don't
the funny
like
part
him
is?
or Anthony Richardson. I don't.
I want to say it was Bleacher Report that did it, and it was like a live mock draft.
Now you already know you can throw that away then.
And I can't remember who the quote unquote draft expert is that did it, but when he mocked Will Levis of the Lions, he said, "I've watched every Will Levis game, some of them twice, and I still don't know whether or not he's a good quarterback."
Who the hell watches that much Kentucky football?
And
Kentucky fans don't watch that much Kentucky football.
So you watch every game, not sure if he's a good quarterback, and you have him going at number 6 overall.
So funny you mentioned that. I'm looking at a CBS mock draft right now. Both analysts have Will Levis going number 7 overall.
I'm looking at a Pro Football Focus mock draft right now, and they have Will Levis going number 2 overall.
There are a lot of reports out there that have him as the number 1 quarterback off the board. Then there's reports that have him as the number 3 quarterback off the board. So, I mean, it's kind of a toss up there.
If that happens, I'm open to it because the more quarterbacks that get taken early, the more of a chance there is we can trade up for Will Anderson.
Yeah, I agree. Because if, this mock draft has, granted, this mock draft has
or Jalen Carter. I'm cool with either, to be honest with you.
So both of these mocks have Jalen Carter and Will Anderson going in the top 3.
Yeah.
One of them has Carter going 1 to the Bears, then Anderson 3 to the Cardinals. One of them has Anderson 2 to the Texans and Carter 3 to the Cardinals. So I'll be honest with you, fat chance the Lions are getting either one of those guys, unfortunately.
Yeah, I agree. No, you're going to have to trade up, and you're going to have to probably pay a pretty decent price to do that. So
Right. The one guy that I think the Lions are probably going to be looking at targeting at 6 if they make that pick is going to be Brian Breesy, again, like we brought up. I don't even see Brian Breesy in this mock, which is kind of
strange. Miles Murphy, he's still there. I don't know if you
Miles
really
Murphy, the Clemson junior.
Yeah.
Yep, he's another one you could look at. He's another one you could probably trade back for. Not gonna lie.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be cool with you. Like, if we're gonna go for an edge rusher, I would trade back and take whoever's available of Tyree Wilson and Miles Murphy, and if that's the case.
That's fair. But there's a lot of good things to be coming with this Lions team. A lot of good. Shall I move to the Pistons?
Let's move on to the Pistons.
All right, let's do it. So you went to the game against the T-Wolves. Are they still the T-Wolves, or are they just the Wolves now?
They're the Timberwolves.
Okay.
They were coming off the night before of a game against the Sixers where they let up 147 points, which I'm not mistaken is the most they've let up in like 30 years.
Yeah. Good game. Great defense.
So coming into this game, Timberwolves were finally getting Anthony Edwards back for this game, and we still had Jalen Duren out, Isaiah Stewart out. Obviously, Marvin Bagley's going to be out for an extended period. So I placed 2 parlays, and one of them I normally, when I go to a Pistons game, I'm betting on the Pistons to win. I took Minnesota to win in one of my parlays, in one of the 2 parlays I played. The second parlay hit, and the only thing that missed in the first parlay was that Minnesota money line. Don't know why I did it, but anyway, that's beside the point. So no, they came out with a pretty impressive 135-118 victory against Timberwolves.
They shot better than I think I've seen them shoot in 2 years.
Yeah, they shot like 50% from 3 that game.
They shot 60% from the field. That's what blew me away. I don't remember the last time I saw that team shoot that well.
I think it's
been a minute.
But Sadiq Bey, I think
Looks
this
great.
is
his best game of the year.
Yeah, I want to say this is Sadiq Bey's best game of the year, and part of the reason that it was his best game of the year is he finally embraced his role as a shooter.
Hit shots.
Well, yeah, but he stopped trying to be Sadiq Bey last year, like the bruiser slasher Sadiq Bey.
Yes.
He's like, I'm going to get back to what I.
So what you're telling me is we're going to see him put up 9 points on a 4 of 17 shooting night next game, right?
I mean, he was coming off of 17 points on a 4 of 14 shooting night, so he wasn't exactly coming off the greatest game.
Right. I really want to see Sadiq succeed. It's just he's really starting to push me in a direction where I'm almost ready to get rid of him.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's that points been this year where he's just unplayable.
Yeah. But no, one of those points was not yesterday. Killian Hayes, he's slowly becoming one of my favorite players to watch on this basketball team.
He is fun to watch. I just wish it was more consistent.
Yeah, I mean, it's in terms of giving defensive effort, it's him and Stewart. And with Stewart out, like he was the heart and soul of us on the defensive side side yesterday, and it really showed. Like watching it in person, like it felt different.
No, it's not like they had a good defensive game. They
didn't.
118 points.
No, I'm not acting. This is a horrible defensive team, right? Which is what happens when you start. When they start like 4 guys that are 21 or younger on a normal night without injuries. Because Jaden Ivey's 21 or 20 even. Killian is 21. I think Isaiah Stewart's 21. Duren's 19. That's 4 guys right now.
Well, did Duren play? I thought he was out.
No, I'm saying in general. Like the normal starting lineup right now with Cade out.
Yeah.
You're starting 4 guys who are 21 or younger, which is absurd, but
yeah, not great. Not great.
Is.
It's a kindergarten playground back out on that floor with them.
So, like, I was ready to come on here after the Philly game and start ranting about kind of what I talked about in the last pod, where when this team shows up and looks like they don't even want to be on the basketball court, you can't expect fans to watch the game. Like you can't expect anyone to get invested in this, and that's really what they did against Philly. They showed up and they had zero interest in playing basketball. Very low effort night, and so I came in the Minnesota game. I'm like, if the first game of the back-to-back was low effort, what's it going to be on the second game of the back-to-back when you're on a travel day too? Like,
if at halftime they're down by 20, we going to the bar?
Yeah, well, they started off down 10-0 before Dylan Casey had to call time.
Right.
And I was like, oh, here we go again. But I think what we saw was with Nerlens Noel starting, with Bogey back in the lineup, you had some adults in the room, at least in the starting lineup, and they were more disciplined, way more disciplined out there. But in general, it's been the story of the season. It's just an undisciplined season, but you got to hold on to the ones that actually are interested in playing defense.
Is it just me, or does this season almost feel wasted?
Oh, 100%. It definitely feels wasted.
Like
you're not developing your best young asset because he's out for the year.
Even as a fan, I feel like watching some of these games like I'm wasting my time.
Yeah, your second best young asset, Sadiq Bey, has taken a massive step back. The only things you can hang on to this season have been the development of Isaiah Stewart, the development of Killian Hayes, and the emergence of Jalen Duren and, to a certain extent, Jaden Ivey.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Like, there are some good things to take out of this season so far, primarily Isaiah Stewart and Killian Hayes, but we've gotten some good looks at Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren, albeit not with the guy that they're going to primarily be playing with, which one of the biggest reasons I feel like it's been a waste is because Cade's not been there, and I'm not able to see, okay, how is Jaden Ivey going to work with Cade? What kind of looks is he going to get with Cade on the floor, and how does he take advantage of it? Jalen Duren in the pick and roll with Cade, how's that going to look? How's that going to operate? How many times are we going to see Cade roll off the pick, Duren rolls to the basket, you get an alley-oop dunk? Like, how is this going to work? Yeah. And that's kind of been like one of my biggest issues and why I feel like the season's almost wasted is we got to see none of that.
Yeah. It is interesting you bring it up, though, because this was something that James Edwards brought up in his podcast in terms of you're seeing two guards right now, Killian Hayes and Jaden Ivey, starting night in, night out. He was making the argument that Killian Hayes has made a legitimate case to be the guy that plays alongside Cade next year. I'm curious to get your thoughts on that. So real quick, I'll give you some splits. If you take their averages since Cade went down, so basically since Killian Hayes and Jaden Ivey have been starting together, Killian Hayes has been averaging 12.3 points per game and 6.5 assists per game on 42.5% shooting from the field, 35% from three.
Better than what he had been.
Yeah, 35% from three.
Night and day.
Jaden Ivey, 15 points per game, 4.5 assists per game on 40% shooting, also 35% from three. Now they also, one plays defense and the other is
right. Now let me ask
figuring
you
this.
It out. How many games did Jaden Ivey play with Cade before he went down? Was it like 10?
It was just about that, yeah.
Can you get me his? And I know it's totally not going to be what he is now because he's a more developed player now than he was then. Yeah. But what were his splits when he was playing alongside Cade?
I'll get you in a second here. So,
and I almost want to say they're irrelevant, but for the sake of the argument, I want to hear it.
I'm just going to give you the games leading up to when Cade got hurt, basically.
Yeah.
15 points, 3.5 assists, almost exactly the same, on 44% shooting, but 31% from three.
That's the reason I take Jaden Ivey over Killian. Jaden is a better scorer.
The fact that playing alongside Cade, he's still scoring 15 points a game.
Right. And Killian never, like the Cade Killian project never worked out.
But we haven't seen Cade with this version of Killian.
Right. But part of me wants to say that this version of Killian only comes around because Cade's not there.
It's very possible. Just like the version of Sadiq Bey we saw about Jeremy Grant only ever came around when Jeremy Grant wasn't playing.
I think that the fit just makes more sense with Killian not playing alongside Cade. And Jaden Ivey playing alongside Cade just makes sense. Like it's a good fit. I would much rather see that scenario because in all reality, like we're talking about Killian Hayes, who's been in the league for 3 years, and Jaden Ivey, who's been in the league for like 5 minutes. So
yeah, no, it's not exactly like the most fair comparisons, but we're talking about what we have right now in our hands.
Going to be a better offensive basketball player than Killian Hayes.
I agree with you.
Putting him alongside Cade Cunningham, I feel like will be much more effective than he would be playing on his own. Probably. I also will say it'll allow the team to spread out the defense. You put Cade, who is an able and arguably good defender, alongside Killian. Yeah, your backcourt defense, great. But what happens when your bench comes on the floor? They become a turnstile. Now you stagger that. You put Killian off the bench and you put Cade there alongside Jaden Ivey. Your backcourt defense takes a downgrade in the starting role, but it doesn't. You don't lose much when you bring in the second unit. Defensively speaking, you can stagger the defense and create a defensive depth that you wouldn't be able to otherwise. So that's why I would probably lean Killian coming off the bench, still playing 25 minutes, no doubt.
Okay, he's like as long as he stays on his current trajectory, he's definitely played his way into like the solidified 6-man role at least.
I would like to see Killian and Cade have their minutes staggered from each other. I would like to see Killian continue to play alongside.
It's a good point because of the fact that at least so far in his rookie season, the Jaden Ivey point guard experiment hasn't really looked all that great.
Right.
Which is why you're seeing Killian be the primary ball handler night in, night out right now.
And he's just not going to... Like, Killian is best when he's the primary ball handler. The best version of Killian is as a primary ball handler. And I'm sorry, but the best version of Cade is as a primary ball handler.
Yeah.
Can't have two primary ball handlers. You can't. Because Killian is not a guy who you can give the ball in the wing and tell him to spot up and shoot.
They've tried it and...
Doesn't work.
Yeah, it hasn't really worked as much. But most of his three-pointers right now have been on catch and shoot. So that's the other thing. I don't know. I think there's a psychological thing with Killian Hayes in terms of being the primary ball handler versus playing off ball.
Yes, I agree. 100%.
He's got a different swagger about him when he's the primary ball handler.
And that's part of the reason I feel like the Cade Killian project just didn't work out. Like, what are the chances we could have seen this version of Killian last year if he wasn't playing alongside Cade? I think there's a chance. We'll never know, obviously. It's purely speculation.
It's a fair argument, but...
Like, I'm not saying Cade is going
It's hard to believe that, like, Killian is still, like, firmly 21. Like, he's on the verge, 21 on the verge, turning 22. Like, he is still...
Oh, he's still stupid young. There's no doubt about it.
And Jaden Ivey is still stupid young. Like, that's a reason I haven't hit the panic button with this team yet in terms of just, like, as currently comprised. It's just because they are so damn young. Like, it's hard for me to just quit on it already.
Right. Now, follow up your Killian question. Has Killian done enough to earn a contract extension?
Absolutely.
We
were already talking about extending Killian just because he's going to come cheap, and since with his age, you might as well just see what you.
He's probably not going to come as cheap now, but
maybe not. He might have a couple suitors if he keeps us up.
Right. But frankly, I'd still give it to him. Like, if he's looking at $5 million a year,
he's your best defender. Yeah,
I'd pay that. I'd pay like $8 million a year for him. Probably, maybe. But I'd pay that. Like, I'd be willing to give him some money to come back and continue your development here.
Yeah.
You're hitting your stride. Why would we give up on that right now? We're finally getting somewhere with this guy.
Yeah.
I like him. I do.
And like he really loves to, like, I don't know what it is with people in this town where, like, Dan Campbell waits till, like, people start really being on the edge about him until he finally starts winning games. Killian Hayes, he waited till most of the time was out on him until he started doing well.
Nobody wanted Killian back. Yeah. Nobody. Everybody was like, yeah, this guy sucks. He's a bust.
I feel like really the lone voices that were still like, still give him a shot. Like, he's okay. We know he's not great, but there's no point in wasting it. The biggest thing for me has
always been, like, at the very worst, he can be a really solid defensive specialist off the bench for you. Give him a shot.
And I think that's
he's
why
20
we were
years
patient.
old.
Like, that allowed us to be patient. Like, if you're talking Killian Hayes without the defense, I would have been so far off the boat so long ago.
Oh, I just sent his ass to Turkey. You'd have been playing in the European leagues if you were on my roster.
Mm-hmm.
But no, like, he was so young, and he at the very least provided you something.
Mm-hmm.
So I was willing to allow him to grow as a defensive specialist and allow his offensive game to just kind of come around eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now we're starting to see that. So now I feel like it's a good time that we should extend him, bring him back for a couple of years and see how far we can take this thing. Now, if he ends up playing himself into a position where he is a reliable presence on both sides of the floor, not just reliable, but a good presence on both sides of the floor, well, then we got to start asking questions on what the hell do we do then, especially if we draft Scoot Henderson at number 2. Like, what the hell do we do then?
I say you take Scoot Henderson and figure it out from there.
Well, yeah, it's obviously like you make it work, you figure it out, but like, shit. 4 good guards, like that's crowded.
And honestly, it's weird because the logical way to go is to eliminate the redundancy, which would be Scoot and Jaden. Like, they're both going to be your athletic guard. But then at the same time, we both just talked about how we would still rather have Jaden Ivey over Killian Hayes, assuming Jaden Ivey continues to improve. So like that, it becomes like a nice like thought exercise. Like what do you do? Do you eliminate the redundancy despite it being the better player, or potentially the better player, or do you keep the potentially better player but then lose your only defensive guard?
I'll tell you what. The way Killian has come on and developed, and if that trajectory continues and he starts developing a good offensive game, that's going to put some pressure on Jaden Ivey.
Yeah, it is.
And it should. And I like that because I want to see this kid develop in a big way. I don't want to see him get complacent or lazy. I'd like to see it. So I hope this continues and we start to see Jaden Ivey get pushed a little bit, and you know, whoever we get in the draft, that's going to create another push, another pressure. If it's Wembanyama, if it's Scoot, if it's whoever.
I want to close out by kicking off trade deadline discussion. I think we have about a month till the NBA trade deadline.
Trade them all. No, I'm kidding.
How active are you expecting Troy Weaver to be? I will point out, nowhere to be seen at the game yesterday.
Which I find to be kind of like,
he couldn't have been sitting in a different spot. Possibly,
he could have been up in a
definitely was not in his normal corner table thing that he's in.
Right, he could have been up in a suite. That's very possible.
The Lions were there.
Were they?
Yeah, they had like a handful of Lions, and like they had their own suite.
Well, maybe he was up there with them, fraternizing with the.
He could have been when they showed him on the Jumbotron. There was no Troy Weaver, just the Lions.
He could have been in the suite itself. Like I actually am probably going to say that's where he probably was, fraternizing with the neighbors, essentially, the other team in the city. Because he actually, the Lions team get a lot of respect from the other organizations in this town. Like, Newsy Lalonde for the Wings has mentioned how he wants to bring Dan Campbell in to talk to the team. Like they respect him a lot.
Did you see Brad Holmes talking about this draft class?
No, I didn't.
Well, in general, like his draft picks in general. I can't remember. It was like
so. What do you
on the
give
local news?
This past Lions draft in terms of a grade?
Oh, now in hindsight, you gonna give anything less? But no, like he started talking about like the selections of like guys like Penei Sewell, for example. You did specifically discuss Penei Sewell, and he started tearing up talking about like these players. And I was like, Jesus Christ.
I do. I'll be straight with you. I feel like there is a brotherhood.
I don't think I've ever seen a GM tear up.
There is a brotherhood and a connection in that organization that we have never seen within the Lions. There's just a cohesiveness across everybody from the top down that we have never seen in a Lions organization. And
I think you need a little bit of regime change in the Pistons to try to mimic that.
I agree. There's a lot that needs to happen there. I definitely feel like there's a huge disconnect with the Pistons that just doesn't feel comfortable. But in terms of the trade deadline, how active do I think Troy Weaver is going to be? I think what'll surprise us is how inactive he's going to be. And by that, I mean he's going to probably trade guys like Nerlens Noel and one of Alec Burks, and
that would be interesting. And, like, speaking of Nerlens Noel, that was the top guy to get traded. Then Marvin Bagley goes down for almost the entire rest of the season at this point. You almost can't afford to trade him as much as
right. I don't think it really matters because what the hell are you playing for? Shit, try Killian out at the 5 for all I care.
You'd eliminate your depth at that point. But then at that point, I would just say stagger Duren and Stu.
Yeah.
And start Sadiq at the 4 or something.
Who cares? Call a dude up from the G League for all I care. Like, it doesn't matter. Yeah. Sign dudes from Lifetime on 10-day contracts. Hey, man, come get your shot. Here's your lifelong dream. Like, who cares?
Yeah, I do agree
assets
that
for somebody, go do it.
I do agree that Nerlens Noel is still the most likely if anyone were to get traded.
It's gonna be like 1 or 2 of like Nerlens Noel, Alec Burks. I don't think Bogdanovich is going anywhere.
Teams are knocking. I just don't think the Pistons actually want to trade him.
No, I don't think they do either. And that's it. Like, I don't because the reason is the other assets that people want on your team are too young for you to trade or be willing to trade.
If you get an unprotected first and a young asset for Bogey, are you pulling the trigger?
Yes.
Same.
I'll be honest with you, yes. Like, if the
but at the same time, I don't know if just an unprotected first
and the young asset though?
No, I'm saying if just an unprotected first is enough for me to pull the trigger.
Probably not.
I think it has to depend on which team we're talking.
In all likelihood, it's going to be a good basketball team calling for Bogdanovich, and so the pick's going to be in the 20s. I'll pass. Now, if the Celtics were to come to me and say, hey, we'll give you Grant Williams for him, I'd probably take that.
Yeah. Grant on top of the fact that we're like already young enough as it is, we need adults in the room.
We do, absolutely.
Like, look at the difference we saw last night.
We would be essentially trading away the only kindergarten teacher we have. Kids would quite literally be running the preschool.
Yeah, but I do agree that it's probably going to be a pretty quiet trade deadline, just because of the fact that you don't have a lot of trade assets that make a whole lot of sense to move at this point in time. Yeah. So
movable pieces in the meaning of like on either side of the argument. Like you don't really want to give up Sadiq Bey because his value's low as it's ever been, and he's still really young. He's more valuable to you than he would be to anybody else. You're not trading Cade. You're not trading Jaden. You're not trading Killian. Probably not. Killian is actually an interesting one.
Capitalize on his current rise. Yeah.
There could be some teams that'll come a-calling for him. That's an interesting one. I've not really thought of that until
I don't know if I'll be too happy. I'll be honest with you.
I don't think I would be either. I don't think I would.
Just because of how devoid of defense the team is. I'm like, you're trading the one guy. The one guy.
Right. But again, though, you're not trading Duren. You're not trading Stu. Like, what else you got? There's your whole team. So it's going to be a quiet deadline, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I agree. No, that's about it.
All right, that is going to close it out for this week, guys. Thank you for listening. Follow us on Twitter at Real Fan Report. Thank you to Detroit Sports Podcast. As always, at Detroit Podcast, where you can find them on Twitter. This has been the Fan Report. Was by fans.
For fans.
We will catch you guys next week. Enjoy the weekend. Peace out.
Peace.